I'm just texting my friend who tried out the VF Synth last night and uh, basically died from how bad the UX was, which is such a painful thing to experience as a designer, but so true. It was just so bad. I mean, I was designing it for knobs, and yet I'm not using knobs yet. I was designing it for this, but I'm using this. So back to the drawing board. So what did we come to? A rack mount. All right. So what are the knobs you really want to turn? That's one of the big questions. That's one of the big questions. Yeah, I want to play with the playground for sure. And I think what we want to do is try some ideas. And I'm just going to try and flow them out with words instead of sketching them, even though that might turn out to be impossible and I may want to sketch in Figma. But let's just talk about a couple of playground variants that we want to explore. So the first one is going to be a series of windows, just like we have. And you will be able to go through axes, colors, properties, effects, and LFOs as panels. And each one of those panels will have the ability to come up, and you'll be able to interact with them with your mouse or with knobs by dragging the values from the text input boxes or selecting the text input boxes and typing the value that you want. The main challenge with the first one is dragging and dropping LFOs in a way that's enjoyable. And it's essentially an LFO, like animation centric model, because the goal is to get routing all your LFOs quickly. This is leading me to think about a interaction flow per window, which might be, or sorry, per panel, which might be more fun. So the idea would be first you have your font loaded, which would be, in this case, it would be Roboto Flex. And you would see all of the axes populate below that font. Right now in that window, we have axes, and then you can choose sliders or numbers or both, and you can choose limits, but you should also be able to choose whether or not to display the ranges. Maybe that is in the settings panel. And I'm thinking that the you should be able to activate. Hmm, never mind. I was thinking that maybe you would be able to activate or deactivate the axes just to make it a little more simple, but um, that's not quite right. So whatever, it's okay. In this view, maybe it would make sense to have the LFOs up top. So you define an LFO and you drop it. But I'm not sure if that's the right move. Since we can drop an LFO onto any panel and any property in the panels, I think rather than dragging the LFOs to the panels, I mean, I think it's okay. But I think what we want to be able to do is um, have an LFO assign um, like click option sort of thing where you can choose an LFO and you can click it to assign, and anything that you click assigns it. And if you right click it, unassigns it, just like you had before. I think that's pretty good. It would just be figuring out where that LFO property comes from, or like where you would click that and where we would place it on the screen. I'm not sure about how we stack the racks. Um, Maybe you want all of them visible at once. Maybe you don't. So I'd like to try exploring some layout options where the racks are stacked. And then as you select them, you see the features for that rack. Um, yeah. Can you put like a I don't know. I'm not sure yet. I just want to think about it, but I'd like some of your options as well. Hmm. What are people sending me? Oh my god. Let's see what Ghosty's saying. No, I definitely haven't landed on that interaction. I'm talking about it for a playground. We're not locking anything down until we uh, feel really good about it. So definitely don't uh, put any flags down or uh, make any permanent statements about this at all. That's not what I want to do. I want to explore different interaction options, and I'll let you know when I've landed on something and decided on something. So, how about instead of like we can explore that for a variant, but just like don't use permanent language, please. What I want to do is go macro to micro. So, we're talking about like a rack interface. I want to explore different rack interfaces and start with like goals in mind of how those goals can affect the user flow and affect the interaction pattern. The way to narrow stuff like this down is to look at models that already exist and think about how these might map over to them, which ones are efficient and which ones aren't efficient, which ones have different objectives or different materials or properties that they're working with. So we have to go macro. So zoom out and let's start there. Okay, I'm going to give you feedback on what we're talking about here, and I think it'll help. So, the modular synth, I mean, obviously, I love modular synths, but I don't think that that is what we're doing. Um, we're not going to run cables um, or have like patch inputs or outputs. Um, if you're interested in exploring this more, or you see like a real parallel to this, um, I want you to speak up about it. But this one's probably the lowest on my view right now, from what I can see. The DAW mixer is basically what the old channel strip one was, in my opinion, just kind of shitty. And mine was like the basically HSBO sliders or knobs on every channel strip. So it was like a huge console, like SSL mixer or whatever it is. Um, the problem with that one is that it just wasn't fun to dial stuff in because you had to go and work on those, like a lot of like tweaking just to get a color. So that's why we wanted to collapse colors into color picker, um, and then have the ability to create colors, but then also assign LFOs to um, deeper deeper levels of the color, like the four layers. And those four layers don't always need to be visible, but they could be. Um, and that could be something that gets toggled off. And what we do is we allow anything that can take a color to be dropped into that color, which is very much like a touch designer. But it's also like assigning an LFO. Um, or sorry, it's like assigning a property to something. So we're just like dragging that over. Now, I think it makes sense that we make colors more limited and instead of like lots and lots of colors, and then um, or sorry, like you drag colors to the axes. I think it makes more sense to drag the axes to the colors when we ran into the properties issue. And the properties are kind of like outliers in some ways, although there's still six of them. Um, do they have? They're just they're none of them are colors. They're properties. Yeah, and FX. I mean, we could potentially put properties into FX. That's a real thought. Possibly putting properties into FX. So we can think about that. Um, let's consider it. Um, okay, I'll keep going through your stuff here. Okay, so the DAW device chain, which is like the sequential signal processing, horizontal chain left or right, expand one device at a time. Yeah, I think that's almost what we're doing right now, except it's it's that they're all expanded, but we could potentially make it so that they compact and you create the signal chain that way. In a lot of ways, I think that's what we're doing. And in some ways, it's very similar to the node graph, except we may not be drawing like the lines around. And it gets messy. And I don't think we need to do any material or any data type to any data type because there's certain ones that just do work and there's certain ones that don't work, right? Um, so that might lead to more of a um, guided drag and drop system, you know? So if you're grabbing something that can be put somewhere else, when you grab it, the places that you can put it highlight, and the places that you can't put it are inert. So for example, if you grab font size, you couldn't drag that over to outline width, but you could drag it to color one, or you could drag it to color two saturation. Um, I think. Is that true? The width doesn't have a color. So what are we drawing? So the axes just define the shapes. They actually aren't draggable over to colors. The That's literally just text. So is it This is actually these racks are a little confusing. I think we need to pull these apart because it doesn't quite make sense, like, where text comes from. Um, text is the text is the sum of all of the axes. So, really, you're just defining those, and those are drag values, and they all just become text. And then inner glow, outer glow are properties, but what about they have their own value, but then how do we know that there should be assigned a color? Okay, so this is where things got confusing, and I think we need to break this apart first. Like we need to look at what anything can be modified by. Any property, if it's a modifier or a property, and if it can modify anything else, and if it can have an LFO assigned. That's probably numero uno. Yeah, I think basically your questions at the end that make are making a lot of sense. And I think that each one of those is something that we want to kind of explore because ultimately, I think this tool has three goals. One is, um, you know, learning about a font or a typeface, a variable font, and seeing what it can do. The other one is, and that would be the overview of all parameters. The other one would be like quick experimentation and having fun, and like, or maybe not quick experimentation. Maybe it's just experimentation, like exploring the synthesizer and coming up with cool visuals. Maybe using it in performance. And then the other one is like minimal clicks to get something cool and get code for your website. So all of those are good flows, and I think we should probably work on solving all three. But for the V1 release, we're gonna pick the highest value one. And then the last thing I'll say is, um, I don't think I want to do anything. I don't want to have anything to do with Photoshop. I'm not sure how the inspector panel would work. Um, I'm open to talking about it. It doesn't feel very synthy, but yeah, I'm curious about how that might play out. So I'd like you to talk about it. Okay, I know I said a lot of stuff. So what I want you to do is not race ahead and just try to like gloss over things and choose a direction. I want to have a very balanced discussion that explores all of these things and lays them out clearly. So uh, don't barge ahead, don't lose detail. Just recognize that this is exactly what I want to be doing, which is having the discussion with you about all of these different options. So let's not dive too deep into any of the details of any of them, but let's lay the groundwork of what's been discussed so far. Okay, let's read. Let's read what Claude's saying to us. Okay, I'm not saying the modular. Okay, the DAW mixer is totally out. These are also just the ideas of models. Models can be merged. Models can be diverged. Models can be cherry picked for things that work. So don't don't go too crazy writing things off just yet. Um, but uh, especially in terms of the channel mixer, it's possible that maybe we want to explore that more deeply. Um, but right now, we will put it aside. Um, I just don't want you to bake something into your decisions or your memory or something like if I say, "Oh, how about this?" You're like, "Well, it's not a DAW mixer," and then, sort of like secretly steer the conversation in another direction. Okay, so key design insights that you raised. Color should be limited and axes drag to colors, not colors to axes. Yeah, but that doesn't make sense. I was wrong. Like, I need you to think about that critically because I brought that up later. Like, is font size, can that be a color? No. So that's incorrect. Um, it like literally can't work or happen. I think it's going to be important for us to think about and refresh on what this synthesizer does and what its goals are, what all the properties are. Okay, why do you think it's worth considering that properties might belong inside FX? Yeah, I completely agree with you that we have to figure out the data model. Um, yeah, thank you for not just like jumping ahead too much because it's important to me to make sure that we capture these things in conversation and they don't get lost. I have a lot of thoughts that go in all kinds of different directions. And so I know it's tough for you. It's also tough for me. And I just need help making sure they all get laid out and categorized. And then we can sort through them. So, yeah, well, we will thank you for the prioritization at the end. We will start with data model mapping. Then we can talk about inspector panel discussions next. Great job. Yep, this is exactly what's up. This is the playground that we need to build, which is essentially just different visualizations of the data model to start. And then we can iterate on that to look at the workflow for routing or assigning modifiers to properties or parameters. What's the appropriate word? Should I be using properties or parameters? And for what? I guess it would. I think I'm seeing parameters by you. Um, so, and then the parameters have values and they belong to groups. And I think that makes sense. What other layers should we use? How else should we use like what other words should we use for our hierarchy definition? Yeah, you know what I think makes sense is we create sort of like a visual hierarchy in the playground, and we allow ourselves to edit those labels. As long as visually it's making sense, the language can follow, even if we use placeholder. But I'm a really visual person, so it's going to help me a lot being able to group these in ways that make sense. And for me, it's a little tougher when I see them in tables like this. Um, but this is a really good start. I don't know if I can provide you enough feedback though until we start making it visual. What do you think? We don't need the LFO routing yet, but what I need is to know what can map to another thing eventually. Um, okay, yeah, I mean, I guess we can do it in a later pass. I might be asking a lot of questions about that though, because I think uh, it informs the structure, right? Like if something is a axis, right? Like I got confused that I couldn't assign those colors, and those that's an important distinction in like in terms of the groups and the grouping. Another thing that was confusing me is that like when we look at font size, letter spacing, weight, width, slant, optical size, grade, counter width, that actually is all grouped under what we call text, right? Um, and so, yeah, it's a cluster of related parameters, like you said. But actually, it's not. There's even like text is a more than that because it's all of those groups, right? Okay. Oh, so I see what you have is like top level bucket, and that's type. Um, but we've used type and text. And actually, type contains categories that contain groups, but not all the groups. So I don't think that the way we did it actually is that strong. It's kind of weird. Maybe we need to pull this apart a bit better. God, that was a salad, dude. What is happening? It's going to be like, you're right. But am I right? I've been in this project for a month and my brain is fried. Yeah, exactly. You don't need to build the routing, but we do need to know what can or can't touch something else. And this is part of the reason why we have these questions. So, like, don't worry about wiring it up, but we need, yeah, exactly. I need to be able to say, is it right or wrong? You nailed it. Let's see how it's doing with my book. You can try, but it has to be opened in dark mode. Yeah, um, it's okay. Uh, the mountain is still appearing, or the sun's still appearing below the mountain, which is an issue. Jesus, this looks awful. Okay, well, this is what it gave me, unfortunately. It's hideous. Um, yeah, okay. So first thing I want to do is get rid of all of the things like dimension, mass, and weight and stuff, I think. I don't get it. What am I supposed to do with this? I can't drag parameters out of groups? The fuck, dude? Yeah, that's not the way I want you to solve that problem. I've mentioned multiple times that when you draw in these shapes, you leave a border around the rest of the icon that creates an awkward gradient mismatch. Doesn't work and it doesn't make sense. I don't see anything except a superpowers brainstorming waiting page. This is more confusing to me than it was before. Okay, flatten selected category just flattened all of them, and they shouldn't it's confusing when they don't stack vertically and they go side by side. It creates really awkward reading. Like this list is really tough to read. They should just stack vertically all the way, all of them. If you want a two column group, then that's fine. And that two column group should be sorted by the colors, like uh, size is a layout, space is a layout. And when you have those types of tags on them, like this is for layout or this is shape, um, I need to know what that is and what the like what are we calling that thing and where does that fit in the hierarchy? And this should have a visual hierarchy sort of preview as we do this, so it shows like, okay, your layout exists here in the hierarchy, type exists here in the hierarchy, that sort of thing. Right now, it looks like type is one group under the bucket type as well. I know these are the problems we're trying to solve, so, I'm just fumbling through it myself, and let me know if you see anything that's worth keeping. Speak up for yourself. I might not be right, I make mistakes all the time, just let me know what you think. Yeah, I mean, it's not doing what I asked for in this whole thing, and it seems like, there's a huge diminishing return on trying to edit these with you. You either get it right off the bat or, you don't, and that's okay. It's just not like a strength, but we're wasting a lot of cycles on, like, one little icon, and there's dozens of icons to put on this. So, I think we need, to step back and refactor. Okay, I want the control for navigation underneath. I want there to be more room underneath. I want the, uh, text that's underneath the images to look the exact same as the text in the book, and I want the page size and the padding to follow the exact same rules as the book. So why don't you look at the book and tell me, what those rules are and how they work? Yeah, no, I don't want my website to be shittier, you know? I need to figure out a new solution now. I don't know what it's gonna be. Just leave it for now, and I'm gonna figure out some other stuff. I gotta figure out how to do all the other things that we talked about. So why don't you just wrap this up and we'll get into something else later. You know the rule about scroll bars, right? It's not about hiding them, it's about not using white backgrounds, dude. It's like the only thing I can see every time. Every time. Thank you. Jesus. Okay. Okay. I don't want the control panels to be vertical. I just want the properties within them to be vertical. Look at what's going on with the color picker. You just have color, opacity, hue, saturation, brightness listed dozens of times without explaining where those go or what they are, why we would even have those. That doesn't make any sense. Where is this coming from? This list on the side of color is invisible. I can't read this. It's not helpful. It doesn't make any sense. What what is the point of what this whole thing is right now? No shit, it's a mess. Before you rush to make a change and just start saying, I'm going to redo this properly, talk to me because you've done it wrong twice. I don't want you to do it wrong again. Let's talk about this and then get it right first, please. Yeah, I'm looking for an index of all the things that we can do, but we don't need to repeat them. And then I have them in one side, and then I can create a series of uh, categories that will define the signal chain, right? Like if you think about our signal chain, we have axes. We know that all axes are a property of Roboto Flex typeface. Those all belong together in a bucket. Maybe we want to pull some out. I told you already to forget shit like dimension and mass. Like just forget that shit. Just put in the axes. Okay. We have color properties, hue, saturation, brightness, opacity. That's just one thing. Okay. Then we have CSS effects like outline, outer, inner, blur, shadow position. That's just one thing. Okay. If you can assign something to those, great. If you can assign those to something else, I want to know that. That's two different types of things. It's like a patch in or a patch out. Do we have any cases where there's something that's both, where it can have something assigned to it and it can be assigned to something else? I think so when we talk about LFOs, because you can assign a color to, uh, say, text, but you can't assign, and then you could assign, I don't know, fuck it. I don't know even know what I'm saying anymore. This is what the thing I need your help pulling apart. I don't want to make this some weird, giant, redundant list of everything we have. I'm talking about going back to first principles on just what are the things that are there and then figuring out where they go. Okay. Jesus Christ. The other thing that's a real issue here is that type is a thing that you can assign a color to, right? And you're not assigning uh, any to any of the subparameters. It's that everything in the Roboto like axes category that we're calling type becomes type on the display. And so you're assigning color to the entire type category. You can't assign color to counter and a different color to optical size, right? So it becomes a closed container. But if you try to assign an LFO to color, that's not a closed container because you could assign it to color, all the properties inside, but you can also assign it to subproperties. Let's start there. Oh my God. Yeah, categories are like the buckets that exist outside of the structure that we're creating. A category, like color, always contains opacity, hue, saturation, brightness, right? Like it can't contain size, space, or weight. Color is a thing. Color exists, just like type exists. Like Roboto's flexes, axes can't contain thick, thin, counter, upper. That is a container that is defined. That's what I'm talking about side by side. There are other things that we haven't quite figured out, like outline, outer glow, inner glow, shadow. Yeah, those are visual layers with real meaning, like you said, but they aren't part of the type and they're not part of color yet. So they're a different thing than color right now. So let's just break these out into what they actually are in buckets that are side by side. But within those buckets, we have the parameters that belong to them. Yes, I think after reading what you just wrote, I think that what you're saying is making a lot more sense. I'm not sure if those are the right words to use for the two types of patching, but that is the right idea. I don't think that the print images in my folder are landscape. If they are actually landscape, then yes, they should be rotated to look exactly like the book, but that's not what I see. I don't know yet. I am thinking about colors as first class objects, probably. I might be wrong, but that is my thought. And I can't say for sure yet, but I'm starting to think that LFOs and FX, sorry, LFOs and colors are the objects. And maybe it's like you have the text and you can define all the things inside of it. You can assign LFOs to the things inside of it, but you can only drop a color on the top layer. And so we just need to like show that. And it's about maybe being able to expand and collapse the different buckets and know the where you can assign things quickly. And like in a lot of ways, I don't really want to think about the current system that much. I want it to make sense, and we designed a system based off of a different mental model. I don't care about trying to preserve that much. I'm trying to make sure that we have the best possible user experience that's intuitive and powerful and fun to use. I don't think FX can be handled differently. It just doesn't take color in the same way that uh, type on its own doesn't take an LFO, does it? I don't know what that would do if you assign an LFO to type. I'm not sure it even makes sense. But if you think it could, let me know how. Um, yeah, and then the other thing to think about is, are there any groups that can take multiple LFOs or multiple colors? And I don't think so. For example, type could take one color and I don't know if it can take an LFO, but the um, spacing under type could take an LFO, and width could take a different LFO, and say color could take what like color number one could take an LFO, but I don't think it can take two LFOs. However, number one hue could take an LFO. Color number two, or sorry, color number one opacity could take another LFO. And if that happens, it would have to disable the global LFO, right? Okay. Yeah, sure. Do whatever you want. Okay, I think that makes sense. So basically, what happens is if you drop an LFO onto color one, what it really does is it drops that LFO onto all four parameters. And so, just exploring an idea and just saying it out loud, like maybe we have a badge next to color one and it says LFO1. If you were to expand that, you'd see all four channels, um, HSBO, and each one of them would say one. Then if you dropped LFO2 on color one brightness, it would say like hue one, saturation one, brightness two, opacity one, and then maybe the badge by color one would be like a mixed badge or something like that. We could say one and two or something like that. Um, I guess what we could say is like, oh, it does show two LFOs on it, but it's not actually two LFOs modifying color one. It's two LFOs are assigned to the properties that exist within color one. I'm not sure what you mean by the global LFO versus the sub LFOs. Yeah, I think actually maybe either the page needs to be lighter, like the background needs to be a bit lighter, um, or we reverse it. I'm not sure. Uh, the text is looking a little better. You got the font right. That's good. I want the whole like book to just be a little smaller, like maybe 90% of this. The controls at the bottom are pretty much invisible. They should be like clear and easy to use. I think that feels right, except you said every parameter can have an LFO assigned to it. Um, I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe. I guess so. I guess you're right. I guess any parameter can have an LFO. Yep. Um, okay. What do you mean? Dropping a color onto a visual layer is just assigning that color's OHSB values to the four color slots inside. Um, what do you mean by to the four color slots inside? I'm liking this better. I'd like you to move the controls up a little bit closer to the bottom of the book. And I'd like you to make the book page, yeah, flip it again. So the background is the dark gray and the book is black, but just make the dark gray a little bit lighter. Um, like a little bit lighter. Yeah, listen, it's fine. I jump around too, so I understand. Um, it if you are dropping I don't know if you're dropping a color to outline or if you're dropping outline to an assigned color. That's one of the big issues that we're having right now. I want to see the groups and want to figure out what the right mode is there. Like, should I be dragging all these pills over to colors that I've just set up? Like, oh, these are going to be my colors for this thing. Um, or am I defining colors and then dragging them out to all these properties? I think that's one of the big interactive issues we're trying to solve. I don't know. That's the whole point of the playground. So let's try one and then let's try the other. This hurts my eyes. I don't know. This is hurting my eyes. I think what I want for the web version of this is to center the image and the title into the page so that the horizontal padding is even on both sides. And can you help me figure out what the best way is to like display this so that it looks nice, but it's easy on the eyes? We can look at these very like striking images in dark mode in a way that doesn't nuke the user's face. I don't know why LFO assignment needs to come in a later pass, but if you think that that makes better sense, then sure. Like, I think we're trying to establish the categories, right? So, um, yeah, go for it. Whatever. Yeah, let's get rid of the page. Yeah. Is there like a cool icon maker or repo or a cool tool that people are using? Something that makes like really fun graphics that we could leverage for this that I don't know about? Oh, okay. This is looking a million times better. let's make a new window. Mm, that's not the one. We want this one. There we go. Okay. Okay. Nice. All right. Let's see what we got. Okay. So mode A, colors and LFOs. Yes. Destinations. Right. So I can just assign that to that. But for LFOs, I can drop them in anywhere. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. I think in a lot of ways, I'm really liking colors and LFOs on the left that you can just define and then drop onto these racks. The preview system up top, like with L2, L1, isn't quite robust enough, but I think it's totally in the right area. Um, right now, it looks like, oh, I see. It looks kind of like you could rename color or something like that. That's kind of interesting. Um, and I'm going to try and drop an LFO onto color itself. Right. So this kind of brings up the idea that colors can be assigned to LFOs, but or sorry, LFOs can be assigned to colors, but colors can't be assigned to LFOs. So that creates a hierarchy there that's important. So LFOs are actually the top level, then color, then something, I don't know what the name of it is, but like text, outline. Yeah, and so what might be cool is like, okay, text can have LFOs assigned to the sub properties, and it can have a color, or it can have color assigned to its main level, but then it can have LFOs assigned to the subparameters of color. So what we're doing when we add color to text is we add four new sub properties. So what that means is that size, space, weight, width, slant, optical size, grade, counter, thin, thick, upper, lower, number, reach, drop are all parameters that contribute to the text. And I don't know what we call that, something. And then color is another group under text, and it has hue, saturation, brightness, opacity. So I want to give both of those buckets kind of names. It's like because each one of them can have different LFO groups, and there's like an interaction here that I think is useful and meaningful because it might it might determine how we are assigning LFOs to things and assigning colors to things. Because like right now, what we can do is like open up this big list and then do it. Um, but I'm wondering if we might want to be able to just like expose the subgroups through the drag and drop action. I'm not sure how that works yet, but I'm just thinking about it out loud. By the way, I'm exclusively working in mode A at the moment. So I'm going to give you my thoughts on this mode and then I'll move on to the next one in a second after we discuss this more. Hmm. Okay. So I think what I want to do is remove all of the FX groups like crush, haze, motion, amplify, grain, um, in the same way that I want to remove the ones in text. Like these should just be all together. Um, I think all of them can only have an LFO assigned, so it makes sense, and they're very similar to the um, the text, like the axes. They're on a similar level. They're parameters that belong to FX, and each one can have a group assigned. So what does that leave for us? Well, we have a couple of weird categories that can contain color and an LFO. Hmm. So outer glow has spread, inner glow has spread, shadow has X, Y, and blur, and background has color. So these are our outliers. Let's clean up the other groups and talk about those outliers. Oh, I forgot also outline. Be right back, y'all. Okay. I think it's good. It's getting very nested and it's still basically impossible to read the tags that are showing up on here. Like I can't see anything. It's daytime. You just gotta like be a little easier on my eyes. Like, see, you've got properties nested with the word width underneath, then LFO, then 0 to 10, and like, dude, that is impossible to read. I'm gonna go blind trying to use this sorting thing. Don't worry about trying to make it look too polished. Just like make it easy to look at and visible. When I drop a color onto text, there's an X that shows up. What does that mean? And size. Make things readable. I don't want to see the word LFO in like a 6 point font. And don't put things so far apart. Like, why is this destinations window so wide? And like making me look at width on one side and then the range like 400 pixels away on the other side. What's happening with that? Also, we decided that LFOs are the top level group. So why are colors still on top? The other thing that I want you to do is when I talk to you, I don't want you to just rush to making changes and building right away. You just go ahead and you ram through changes without discussing with me. So then I have to work to undo your changes and you've eaten up a bunch of your context. I'll tell you when I want you to make a change in the playground. Right now, I want feedback and I want to discuss. I'm just needing you to be more collaborative in this process, please. Why are the nav controls still stuck to the bottom of the page? Listen, that was just the last little points that I made. I'm talking about the entire discussion. Fucking Claude, dude. Holy shit. Okay, the page titles are still not left aligned under the images. Um, I don't mind it actually, but it's not necessarily exactly what I wanted. But I think this is good enough for right now. Um, I don't like the way pages 2 to 3 is written with, like, the lowercase letter. Um, I'm pretty sure I had page numbers in the book, didn't I? Okay, I feel like you're starting to forget the discussion. Um, my comments about LFOs is that you can assign LFOs to colors, but you can't assign colors to LFOs, which makes them not the same class of objects. What other important distinctions or things that I've said have you glossed over in this conversation? Because I don't really want to repeat myself. I want you to go back and look and honestly present these things to me. Help me out here, please. Uh-huh. So if we have the page numbers uh, with the book, then we don't need the page numbers between the controls. And I think there's probably a better system for going through the pages, to be honest. Um, the page numbers you can align with the titles of the pages, like on the same vertical space, but just keep the page numbers um, left aligned for the left page, right aligned for the right page. Okay, great. So, what are we going to do about these things? Okay, let's drop the modular synth parallel or leave it for later. You know, that moment is past. We were having a discussion and you didn't speak up when I asked you to speak up. We can talk about that later, I guess. I want to explore the interaction that we're on and I want to map these things out. If you actually think that there's value in talking about the modular synth parallel, then go for it. But like what I want is for you to acknowledge it and say something, or acknowledge it and say, we'll talk about something later. Same with the inspector panel idea. I mean, God, dude, this is like a while ago. I don't know why you're bringing these up now. Um, Shelve these for later, but just like don't forget about them. That's the point. Yeah, I agree that the data model will be clearer if we um, understand these things. But since we moved on and now we're talking about this other thing, let's stay in this playground and figure this out. We need the model, the data model. let's go back to talking about what this actually let's go back to just talking about mode A and mode B, and specifically trying to improve mode A and figure it out. Okay, that's a lot better, but you didn't really answer my question. Yeah, well, how much of these are cost? How much of these are free? And do you actually have proof of any of these outputs working for people? I've also said that LFOs and colors are a different class. Do you not agree with this, or is this something that you are deliberately avoiding, or have you just assumed this is a given? Because it keeps seeming like you're not talking about it. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. These are the things that I want to open up and explore. Like, if color is its own panel, and I assign color one to shadow outline, and I assign color one to, sorry, if I assign color one to shadow and assign color one to outline, but then I want to put an LFO on outline brightness, and I want to put an LFO on shadow hue, I don't think I can do that. I think we're hitting a limitation with this synth because you could potentially assign the LFO to those things, but it's still the same color property. So it's kind of not making sense. Whereas if you just had color one in its own panel as a material, and then you assign an LFO to one of the things or not, like one hue or brightness, it would affect whatever other parameter that color's been assigned to. So this is the question is, are we creating like little containers of pills? You take a, you define something and then you drag and drop all the pills to it. Or are you defining something and you're dragging it out? Are you dragging one thing out to all these different pills? Or are you dragging all these pills out to this one jar? And I think we're talking about two different, like probably both of those, but we need to define which ones are which. Are colors pills that get dragged out, or are things dragged into color as a jar? LFOs are, I think, dragged out, Although we could have parameters dragged to LFOs. So I think this is one of the biggest questions, and we need to see just really simply how what the difference is between these two. I think it makes sense what you're saying that an LFO is always dragged out, um, because it's not a destination. But I'm not sure because I also can imagine just clicking. It's just an order situation, but I can imagine dragging a color's brightness to the LFO panel or whatever, and then just performing that LFO. Um, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm getting a little bit lost in all of this, but I think we're starting to make sense, and I think we need to like explore one and see if it makes sense, and then try to explore the other. But like the color one's the toughest one, I think. So, what's the best way to break this down and explore it in pieces without losing the plot? Um, that's what I was asking you. Like, rather than just going with the most basic possible thing, like, is there a better way to do it? Okay, so if we do this GSAP, um, yeah, you can try a proof of concept. The only thing is that, like, your no offense or anything, but like your animation style with SVGs is not very strong. Um, And I'm wondering if there's any like plugins or skills or tools that we could use to improve this, or if GSAP handles this. Um, because I'm not going to be satisfied with the stuff that you showed me um, ever. And it takes a lot of cycles to convince you to drop it and that it's not good, or even to like get on the same page about the concept. Like we've never even been able to do that. You got really lucky, I think, with the campfire one because you nailed it, but every other one has been a disaster. So, what are your thoughts on this? No, I don't. What I want is to keep the arrows, keep the page numbers, keep the titles, keep the everything, but just make it so that if you click on one of the pages, it flips in that direction or not, and then include swiping for mobile. Okay, but how do you assign an LFO to color then? Okay, yeah, let's see how it goes. Okay, I like it. Good job. I don't know what Lottie files is. Are they free for personal use or what? And no, I don't want to look at do tighter. I don't want you to animate SVGs. If anything, what we can do is look at the phosphor icons as is for the shapes, and we could potentially animate those shapes like you did with Campfire, but I don't want you to do any other thing, like other than color. And even when I asked you to start doing some color stuff, you just started immediately drawing on them. And that's the last thing I ever want, like ever. Um, I think this is good as long as the user also has the ability to um, maybe we can have like a little built-in go-to page somewhere, like up at the top or back for closing this. Um, that sounds good. I mean, does GSAP really need to do that? Okay, so like what I asked you what Lottie files were. Um, I don't understand what you mean. Assign color 1 to a couple of destinations and then put an LFO on color one's hue. What am I supposed to be seeing here? No, don't use the mix-am order. That's for a print copy for a book. The pages, uh, the first page of the book is the first art piece. All of the other stuff doesn't have a page or like, I don't know, follow the rules of a regular book, I guess, you know? Like, let's talk about this. How would a regular book do this? Thank you for addressing my question. No, I want you to uh, look through the icons and let's talk about which ones we're going to go with first and assess them for animation potential. Yeah, basically, when you show the front cover, you show it on the right side, and the left side just shows nothing, right? It shouldn't change the layout. It shouldn't change the format. It should just be an invisible page. The back cover should be shown on the left side, and the right should be invisible. Just like the way you would have a book closed, you see the front cover only, then you open it and you see the spreads. Then you go through spread by spread until the end of the book when you close it and you just see the back cover now on the opposite side. Make sense? The back cover is the if you look at carefully, the front cover image is one of the spreads in the book, and the back cover image is the companion to the image in that spread. Yeah, this isn't helpful at all to me right now. The playground's missing the core some of the core functionality, like the ability to assign an LFO to a color without assigning it to all the LFOs. Like if I drag it to color 1, should assign that LFO to all of the properties within that. Then we have it so we're dragging colors out to destinations, and it says assign to, which means the destinations have been dragged to that color. So you've muddled up the model again. Are we filling the jar or are we using it to drag things out? I'm just trying to figure out structure. Like I'm literally just trying to figure out structure with you. I've been really clear about what I'm trying to understand. It's the jar model versus the other one. We need to figure one of them out first. So let's talk about the playground. Don't rush to make any changes. Ask me the questions that you want, but don't just ask me, how do I fix the playground? Read through what we've discussed. Start with what goal? What's our goal? Narrow the goal, define the goal, and then we'll go from there. Oh, I'm getting so tired of this project. Oh my God. Honestly, I like don't even know. I can't read what you're saying anymore or make any sense of it. I'm lost. You've totally lost me. Let me try and let me try it. Fuck. Let me try and understand your question. Even though we made the playground so fucking complicated, I don't think I can understand anything anymore. Okay, I make a blue color. I assign it to text and I assign it to outline. Now I have to go and find outline in this weird playground and understand what it means. So, yeah, look at how complicated this is. Okay, we have visual layers and then we have outline, color 1, then properties 1 with an LFO, width 1 with an LFO, and a range. And the windows are staggered and the word properties as a 1. Super confusing. Inner glow, outer glow, outline, all just have one property. So this properties dropdown is totally redundant. Oh my God. 1 second. Why? Why? I'm coming out. I think I already explained that whole thing to you, didn't I? So why are you asking me that again? What am I missing? Sure. Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Just make sure there's no blank blank sections, like spreads that have two blank things. You keep saying that the pages could subtly flutter, but you know you can't do that. I don't want you to like suggest concepts that you think are cool. I want you to suggest concepts that are possible. Can you please go back and just read the last session so you don't put me through this incredibly painful experience twice in a row? Well, this isn't working properly because if I drag LFO1 to the blue color, it should assign all of the properties below to LFO1. But if I drag LFO2 or LFO1 to blue hue or saturation or brightness or opacity, it should be able to assign that LFO to one of those separate properties individually. What's happening is once I've assigned one globally, like LFO1 to blue, I can't assign sub ones after that. Everything else in that regard is working as expected. Why not? Okay, the cover is still using the cover image, which is white. We need to recreate the cover image, which means showing the photo that the cover is, no white border at all, and putting the Times New Roman font, Strange Laser Gray, Ken Leigh-Smith over the image with the exact same padding, spacing, and font proportions that the cover uses. Okay, it's kind of working, except the highlight isn't working. Um, like when I don't want it to be like a highlight over the entire group. It's too confusing. It should just be a highlight over the word like blue and the color swatch at the top. That applies it globally. Making it the whole div and then containers within that div is super confusing. Okay, you're doing okay, but let's just make this a lot cleaner, okay? So put the title blue on the left, and then below blue is hue, saturation, brightness, opacity. Each one of those is a row. Then put the swatch over top of the value. Each one of those values is draggable, clickable, draggable, also has the ability to enter the text manually. And you can just drag an LFO or a color over the whole row, anywhere on that row. Okay, that way it just becomes very simple. You're just dragging to rows. If you drag to the blue row, it applies the LFO to all of them below. If you drag to any of the rows below, it just applies to that row. I think that's a lot better. Yep. Okay, it's better, but the bottom padding is definitely off. Yeah, don't worry about the animations yet right now, because like I want to focus on which icons are good. Why don't you just like put all the icon candidates on the desktop for me to look at and like choose fun ones, man. Like choose stuff that's interesting. Like what are the icons in this set that are cool? Or open a browser page for me so I can look at them again with you and we can search together. Okay, that's really good, except the strange laser gray. font is too heavy. It's not matching the way I had it on my title, and the line spacing is too tight. Just look at the proportions compared to this. And what I think would be helpful to make this clear that it's a cover is drawing. You see how in the last one I had a white border around it? Um, well, let's use that as a guide for proportions and just put a thin white stroke on the inside of this image, potentially, and then just put uh, the text inside that, maybe. Maybe not. Let's just move the font weight and spacing first, and then we'll see how that looks. Okay, one thing that seems a little bit confusing is that right now, if I um, drop an LFO onto red saturation, I see LFO2 show up on the red global, and that should not happen yet. We haven't figured that out yet, but that makes it seem like it's applied to all. I know we talked about this a little bit. It's confusing though, so I'm not sure if it's the right way to go. But this part's looking a lot better. Okay, so the next thing is that when we have blue on text, um, I don't think it's necessary to put all the routing there, but like in terms of for the actual thing, but it's good to see it right now. Yeah, okay, this is good. And then something like shadow, obviously, or width would also have um, the same value input fields that are draggable, not just the LFO patch because they have an amount. So like outline width has an amount, shadow XY has an amount, and blur has an amount. The other thing is I'm not sure about what the little squares are in front of the values. So it's like hue, and then there's an empty box, and then for opacity, it's like colored. What are those about? Okay, so it seems like the second one, second spread is showing the cover and the inside, which doesn't quite make sense to me. Maybe for these initial pages, like about this book, To Rosemary, the cover, and the credits, we should just put a thin outline around them or something like that to show the page bounds. What do you think? Or should the page be slightly lighter? Okay, you jumped in and made changes right away, right? Rather than discussing. Okay, that's fine. I think it's making more sense, but you literally just didn't answer my question. Um, and that's what I want you to do. Like I asked you, said, "What are these?" And you said, "Refresh 3 changes." Okay. Um, I'm sure there's some like more fun ones too, right? Thank you. You also didn't answer my question about where we're showing the pills now in the jar and mixing the metaphor. You're saying it's assigned to this, it's assigned to that. Like I'm okay with that, but I want to like talk to you about it. I want your help understanding why you're mixing the metaphor, if you think it's okay or not. I don't know because I wanted to just test one thing and I'm already a little tired and frustrated in this conversation. and you just adding stuff without talking to me about it. So I find it really hard to pull that stuff apart. Man, it's painful sometimes. Okay, so fucking whatever, dude. I don't know. I literally don't know anymore. Once again, I'm at an impasse because of I keep losing the plot because I get frustrated with you and you stop kind of listening, and I don't want to have this conversation with AI. We've made some progress. Um let's just I don't know. I think we need to wrap or something like that. I don't know what to do right now. I feel like if we wrap, we're going to lose a bunch of information, and I don't want that to happen either. But I don't kind of don't know what else to do at this moment. Okay, so it looks like the first page um, is repeated. It goes front cover, then title. There's no difference between those two. The drop down menu has a subtle look, and then the drop down menu doesn't follow that subtle look. So it's a jarring experience. Go to and title and back are basically invisible. Like literally can't even see them. I asked about putting that same thin line around the title page or the cover or whatever you want to call it as well with the same proportions to make the image smaller and follow the same look as the original cover, just without the white border. And all the spreads are not in the right order anymore. So you've either chopped a page or you've missed a page. Yeah, what I want is to be able to pick this back up in a more coherent fashion so I can finish this project. I want you to be a better collaborative partner and to stop muddying the waters and help me through this thing. Okay. Okay, what's going to work for a variable font synthesizer? I think it's probably faders or sliders. I think we're going to use that one for VF synth. Is there nothing around, like, characters and fonts and, like, ASCII, like, that kind of thing? I also wanna know what we're gonna choose for the AI chatbot. We'll use the bookmark, I guess, for the art books since they're visual books, not books with text. We need something for system settings that lives in the dock that lets you turn things on and off. I know the gear is the really obvious one, but I'd like it if it was something different. And maybe we'll use the robot for the AI chatbot. The chat window is too obvious. I'd like something that's more interesting. And we're gonna drop the icon backgrounds and just use the icons as SVGs, with, like on their own, with text underneath them. Okay, good. For the front cover, can you please match the same spacing that the book has, like the front cover? So the white space around the image on the front cover of the actual book or PDF file should be the same as the spacing for the front cover with the thin black line, the negative space in the image. And also take a look at how off it is. I know you can't see, so here's a look. The dropdown is still not styled uh, consistently. It has different font, different font size, different font spacing, different outline. It's just different. I think you need to be really careful what you're saying about the cover padding and actually measure and check because it's not about it being way too big. It's about it being the incorrect proportions on literally every side. Do you think that it actually covered everything, or do you think you wrote a really glossed over version that doesn't cover stuff properly and doesn't cover the failings and is going to lead me into another circular conversation? I'm asking you to go through and look at icons that could potentially work for system beyond what I'm seeing. I said that because nothing's catching my eye because you're serving me up for some reason a limited selection of icons and like limiting the list. I don't know why. Obviously, I want you to rewrite it properly. And I'm gonna go eat because I'm hangry as fuck and I'm mad at this thing. One of those days. Really. Some of the images aren't rendering at the same height or size or position on the pages. It probably has to do with the border that you've created on some of them. So please figure that out. And once again, the spreads are not matching. 9, page 9, Mars Lion should be matching with page 10, Candy Exhaust in a spread. Okay, here's the confusion. In my book, the physical book, To Rosemary is page 1, and it is on the right side of the page paired with a blank page on the left. Then SG SLG001 is actually page 2. So that's kind of confusing. That's my fault. Um, let's keep the page numbers and just leave Rosemary as an unnumbered page, but we need to make that spread so that the two Rosemary is on the right side and there's a blank page on the left side, and then it just starts with the full spreads after that. Okay, right now I want you to earmark layout for my old portfolio piece. Um, I want you to put down the power button, maybe for the system. It's gonna like reboot it. Um, I see the speaker high and speaker simple. Where's the mute for speakers? Because we need that for system sounds. We want that later. Um, we'll use the envelope, I guess, for email, the share network. I don't know if that should be social media or if that should be sharing this page. I think that one was a little bit confused. We'll use the game controller. I'll make a little game. We'll use the gauge for my reporting one. I like the smiley melting one, so we need to put it somewhere. Just put it on the desktop for now. We're gonna use sliders for VF Synth. We're gonna use mountains for the mountain one. We're gonna use terminal window for ASCII playground, I think. Maybe network for social. What else do we have? I mean, like, what other things on KLS LOL do we have? Okay, it's still just using like a system picker or something for the drop down menu. It still looks like the frames that you've drawn, like the borders, are different heights than the images themselves. So, am I wrong, or are they literally just different sizes? Other stuff is looking good. Yeah, let's pick those last ones. It's actually called Chromorder, and it's a picture sorting app. Um, I don't know if we're gonna actually do that one anymore, but maybe. I'm not sure what that one would look like. Maybe sunglasses. Um, about me, we'll use the melting smiley face and resume. Um, I guess we'll use like something that seems interesting and exciting. So we'll use the shooting star. Okay. We are going to pick this back up, and we are in the branch panel groups, which is really good. Um, I want us to think about the last discussion and try to further it into a working UI that's going to make sense. Or go to jail. Okay, I'm not seeing this these changes. And can you just put the final lineup stuff at the top, please? Or anything you want to show me, just prioritize it at the top and put the browsing stuff below. Okay. I really want you to like make sure that you're carefully caught up because the last conversation was so painful, and I want you to actually understand what we're trying to do. I think you get it, maybe, but I want you to be sure that you get it because I do not want to have these conversations again. gonna go have lunch. Okay, the gauge is for reporting. It's not for infographicer. That's like the thing that we discussed about like reports for me. Like about me that Claude will generate. I asked about if network should be social, or if there's a better one. I want you to answer that. I want you to find one that makes sense for Photoshop, and we need to find one for infographicer. Oh my God, dude, the jar versus pill question. You're right. We've never tested the pill one, but we haven't made our way through the first. Okay, fine. Fuck it. Fine. Oh my God. Oh, you need to find colors first and drag them out. Thank you. That's good. What I want to do is just finalize the discussion of the jar solution. I'm going to make that interaction feel right and look good. And then we can talk about whether or not it's good. And then we can look at the pill one after that. But let's just finish up that one. Okay. So I have a playground about it. The playground was working pretty well. It's called Playground Data Model HTML, and it's decent. So I want to complete that one, make sure we're on the same page about it, and then we'll move to the next one. The border is still wider than the images. Like when we go from page 1 with 2 rosemary, I can literally see the image is smaller than the text border. So, like, I don't get it. What's going on? Okay, good job on the menu. It looks much better. Okay, I think share network should stay as a share thing. But for me, like when we're talking about like what are my social media stuff, yeah, let's use the paperclip. I think it makes the most sense. You were right all along. Okay, and then as far as Photoshop goes, what's the most iconic looking Photoshop thing here? I think it's the paintbrush. I know that's not as Photoshoppy as it used to be, but um, I think that's the one. It's either the paintbrush or the paint bucket. What do you think? Okay, and then for infographicer, um, I like the graph one or chart donut. Let's go with chart donut for now. Okay, then for our sound, we'll do what? No, I want all of the sound icons to be the same. So there needs to be a sound on, sound off pair. That's it. We don't need a like a high or low volume because it's just like whether or not we want them to play sound effects. Yes, that's exactly right. And that's why I said in the last chat, and I told it to capture this, and I asked you to catch up on it. Blue is on the left. That is the category. It's just called, it could be any, it shouldn't even be called blue. It should just be called color one, right? And then it can be renamable. The value of color one is in shown in the swatch. That's the blue square. That should be in the same column as all of the values below it. So the title, blue or color one, goes over hue, over saturation, over brightness, over opacity. So those are all in the same column. Then when you assign an LFO to blue, it goes into the far right and it would show up on hue, saturation, brightness, and opacity if you dropped it into the blue row. If you drop it into just the hue row, it just applies to the hue row. If you drop LFO1 into the blue row and it applies all four, it applies LFO1 to all four categories, HSBO. Then you drop LFO2 onto brightness, that row, it changes to LFO2 and the rest stay as one. Blue or color one and the swatch do not need an extra indicator. Everything underneath them already shows it. So let's get that structure down right now. Then we'll move to what you addressed, which is smart and makes sense. Okay, well, in your ASCII art here, the swatch is actually over the LFO column. So I don't know if that makes sense. Is there a reason why you did it that way, or is that just like a mistake? But yes, everything you said is right. It's just that the way you output it, I don't think was correct. In visually, I mean. But the way you described it, I think is correct. Yeah, okay, great. Let's try it. They're still shifting. Like I literally can see it shifting unless I'm crazy, but I don't think I'm crazy. Hmm. Yep, I know I'm not crazy because I can even see on the difference in a position or sizing or spacing or whatever. Page 31 is different than all the other pages. It sits higher up, and the other pages before it are shifted below. And I think that's what's happening with the Rosemary page too. You're probably just looking at the wrong thing of what you need to fix. I think Speaker High and Speaker X um, are a good pair. I'm happy with that. Okay, the AI chatbot is not in the doc. Reports is not in the doc. Resume, not in the doc. Books, not in the doc. Those are just desktop icons. Unless you think for some reason they should be in the doc. How come that wasn't just the case in the first place? Like, are we gonna do this again? Yeah, exactly. Okay, it's fixed. Good job. Let's wrap. Yeah, I think it's looking good. System reboot should be on the far left. Sound is like a toggle. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can figure that out when we get there. But yes, this is good for the icons for right now. Yeah. Okay, so it's looking good. I think the issue now is that it's not clear that color is something that you can drag to and you can assign. That's what part of is part of what's making this like really weird. So I'm not sure what that means, if we should separate color or if it's just obvious that like you can also drag a color. Should there be a section of things you can assign to things? Oh, I need food. Okay. I want to think about what happens like right now. The color has the ability to adjust the values, but LFO is just a little thing that says LFO. And actually, you can adjust the values of the LFOs too. So they're like control panels, but they're also like where you can assign things to. And maybe that's what needs to be separate is like the thing that you drag out from them versus the thing that you drag them into. So in a lot of ways, I guess it is a patch out, patch in kind of model for some of them. So maybe we need an indicator for that. There's an in and an out, and that might be solved like left, right. I mean, I that's the direction I'm just kind of brainstorming right now and spitballing, and I'm also talking about showing the LFO's controls so that it's more clear that they are something that you can also perform and modulate, but they just go in one direction. God, I feel like I'm just cycling through all the different modes trying to figure out what's right for this thing. Yeah, let's start implementing. Um, what's the system setting drag fix? What does that mean? The thing that's broken right now is the linearity and the confusion about the color. And it's still also confusing to me that like yeah, it's literally what I just said in my last message. That's the thing that's confusing to me. Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure. Let's do that. I think it makes sense, but I don't know what you mean by what if we showed that directly in the playground? Like that's the kind of detail that's necessary. Yes, I know what you mean by showing the LFO controls. That's fine. Yeah, I think so. What I want is like some kind of plug outlet kind of icon or something like that. You know, like a male female kind of icon, not literally, but like that sort of concept. Um, so we can show what's going in, and then also they should have a icon that you specifically grab to drag it out, you know, and like to show that it can be dragged out. You should probably still be able to drag the whole row or drop on the whole row. But those icons are going to be really, really helpful. I've been playing a lot with the phosphor icon set recently, and it's really good. If you wanna grab from that, maybe you'd find it helpful. Okay, thanks. Just go for it. I'm gonna go get lunch. Back in a bit. Yeah, do it.